In the deep stillness of a Siberian dawn, long before the modern world began mapping the skies or charting the silent wonders drifting through the solar system, there was a morning that began like any other. The taiga stretched out endlessly, a sea of green under a pale sky, with only the quiet breath of the wind moving between the ancient trees. Evenki hunters were just rising, stirring embers in dying fires, stretching sore arms after a cold night. No one could have imagined that beyond that soft blue morning light, far above the atmosphere, something enormous, something impossibly fast and bright, was already descending toward the Earth. It had traveled for millions of years across darkness, passing planets and stars without witness, until at last gravity pulled it down toward this lonely corner of Siberia. Up there, it was heating rapidly, glowing hotter and hotter as it sliced through the skies. But on the ground everything remained calm, serene, and half asleep. As the early sun began to push faint colors onto the horizon, people across the region noticed something unusual, something that felt wrong in a way they could not explain. A pale glow appeared, not warm and golden like sunlight, but cold and blue-white, like metal reflecting lightning. It spread slowly, then faster, illuminating the forest in a strange, unnatural brightness. Birds became restless, some falling silent mid-song, others taking off in panicked bursts. Dogs barked and whimpered, their instincts sensing danger long before their human companions understood what they were witnessing. The light grew stronger and stronger until it seemed like a second sun was rising, only this one moved across the sky with impossible speed. It was a massive fireball, larger and brighter than anything anyone had ever seen, leaving behind a shimmering tail that glittered like molten silver. Hunters stepped out of their cabins, shielding their eyes, confused and frightened, trying to understand whether this was a natural phenomenon or a sign from the spirits they believed watched over the forest. Then, without warning, the world exploded. A blinding flash tore open the sky. Even with their eyes squeezed shut, people later said they felt the light burn through their eyelids, bright enough to pain the mind itself. A heartbeat later came the sound, no, not a sound, but a violent tearing of the air, a chain of thunderous blasts as if the atmosphere itself had been ripped apart. Trees bent violently, snapping like twigs. The shockwave rushed outward faster than any wind the region had ever known. Cabins were hurled into the air and shattered. People were thrown meters away, some feeling the sudden heat on their skin as if the sky had turned into a furnace for a brief, horrifying instant. The earth trembled, dust filled the air, and for a moment the entire forest seemed to collapse in on itself. Those who survived later said it felt as if the world itself had cracked open above their heads. When the echoes finally faded, an eerie silence settled over the land. Not the normal silence of dawn, but something heavier, stranger, as if sound itself was afraid to return. Animals had fled. Birds were gone. Smoke drifted between the trees, rising from scorched patches of earth. The Evenki people crept cautiously from their shelters. Those that had not been destroyed and saw that the forest they knew so well was no longer standing. 80 million trees lay flattened, all pointing outward from a single invisible center. The devastation stretched farther than the eye could see. Yet where one might expect a crater, a giant wound in the ground, there was nothing. No hole, no rocks from space, no shattered fragments. Only emptiness and the skeletal remains of upright, branchless trees standing near the blast's epicenter like tall, ghostly pillars. For years, the world beyond Siberia barely learned of the event. Russia was vast, communication slow, and the region remote. But slowly, rumors trickled out of a mysterious explosion, a flash brighter than the sun. Shockwaves felt hundreds of kilometers away. In London and St. Petersburg, newspapers reported strange glowing skies visible at midnight. People read evening papers outdoors without lamps. It took nearly 20 years before a true investigation was launched. In 1927, a meteor expert named Leonid Kulik fought through frozen rivers, deep snow, and swarms of mosquitoes to reach the site. He expected to find a crater, fragments of a meteorite, or some obvious sign of impact. Instead, he stood on a landscape flattened in every direction, a giant radial pattern like the aftermath of some cosmic weapon. But there was no crater. None. The center was bare, empty, quiet. The trees directly beneath the blast still stood upright, stripped of all branches, as if a massive wave of heat had passed over them from above. Kulik was baffled. He searched every direction, dug into the soil, climbed across the fallen forest for weeks, but found no solid remnants, no metallic cores, nothing he could identify as a meteor. It was as if the visitor from the sky had been erased from existence the moment it reached Earth. Scientists over the next decades created theories that tried to explain what had happened. The most accepted is that a stony asteroid, perhaps 60 to 100 meters wide, entered the atmosphere at tremendous speed and heated so violently that it exploded midair before ever touching the ground. That explosion, they estimated, was equivalent to 20 to 30 megatons of TNT, thousands of times stronger than the bomb drop on Hiroshima. Such an explosion would flatten forests, ignite fires, shake the ground for hundreds of kilometers, and illuminate the sky across continents. And yet, because it burst in the atmosphere instead of striking the Earth, it left behind no crater and few solid fragments. Other scientists argued it could have been a comet, an icy body that vaporized entirely upon entry. A comet would also explain the glowing night skies afterward, created by tiny ice particles spreading through the upper atmosphere. Still, even with these theories, certain details remain puzzling. The epicenter's strange pattern, the lack of chemical traces, the total absence of any large fragments, and eyewitness descriptions of the light and heat continue to challenge researchers today. More unusual theories emerged as well. Some suggested a small black hole had passed through the Earth, entering Siberia and exiting somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. Others speculated about antimatter collisions, gas explosions from under the Earth, or even more fantastical explanations. Most of these ideas gradually faded, yet the mystery of Tunguska persisted because the evidence was so unusual. Catastrophic destruction without a clear physical remnant. To this day, no one can say with absolute certainty what the object was made of or exactly how it disintegrated. It remains one of the largest cosmic events in recorded human history, yet also one of the most elusive. Imagine, for a moment, standing in that forest on the morning of the explosion. The air still cool, the sky pale blue, the smell of pine sap drifting softly around you. You would hear birds, the distant splash of the river, maybe the footsteps of animals hidden between the trees. And then, in an instant, the world would change. Light brighter than anything you've ever seen would wash over you. A wall of heat would pass through your skin. A roar louder than thunder would shake your bones. Trees around you would snap like matches, falling outward in every direction. And then silence. A silence so complete that even the memory of sound feels distant. That single moment would forever divide your life into before and after. Today, over a century later, the Tunguska region has grown back. New forests cover the old scars. Animals roam freely, unaware of the event that once transformed their home. Yet the story remains, carried by scientists, historians, and those fascinated by the fragile nature of our world. Tunguska is a reminder that Earth moves through a cosmic environment filled with wandering objects, some small enough to burn up unnoticed, some large enough to cause devastation, and some unimaginably massive. If the Tunguska object had arrived just a few hours later, it might have exploded over a major city instead of an empty forest. Millions could have died in seconds. Humanity's history would have changed forever. And so, as your mind drifts through the quiet of this story, consider the unanswered question that lingers like a whisper beneath the trees. If something so powerful happened once, without warning, could it happen again? Somewhere above us, in the deep black ocean of space, countless objects still travel silently. Some will pass harmlessly, Some will burn in the atmosphere, and perhaps one day, another will arrive unexpectedly. The sky has fallen before, and someday it may fall again. Let that thought settle softly in your mind as you breathe, calmly and slowly, allowing the quiet mystery of Tunguska to drift around you like the cool Siberian air of that silent morning long ago.